A train locomotive can be held in place by little 1-inch blocks of wood under each of its drive wheels. But once it's moving at speed, it can crash through a concrete wall several feet thick. Hi, I'm Darren Wright from 12 Church, where we are figuring out what it means to be disciples who make disciples in our time and our place, and we want to pass on what we're learning so you can be a disciple who makes disciples in your time and your place. Now, what does that train locomotive illustration have to do with disciple making? Well, like that train, disciple making is slow. It starts slowly, but as it gets moving, it gains momentum, and eventually it becomes unstoppable. Similarly, I recall the old space shuttles. It's probably similar with rockets today, but the old space shuttles used 90% of their energy in the first 4 minutes of their flight. And once they broke free from gravity and were moving at speed, it didn't take much to keep them going. Disciple making is slow, but it can gain momentum and become unstoppable in your life and in the people you work with. We just had our 2-year gathering at 12 Church, 2 years of doing our alternative model of ministry called 12 Church. We had, of course, a great potluck, then a time of evaluation. And I asked several evaluative questions at that gathering. One of the questions I asked was, why shouldn't we quit? And there were several answers, encouraging answers, including the spiritual growth people had experienced in the last couple of years, the equipping, and the sense of mission that they had, and how what we were doing actually helped that sense of mission in their lives. One of the questions I asked was, what needs to change? What should we do differently? And I got an answer I've never had before in my entire Christian life and ministry. And the bottom line answer was, we need to raise the bar even further. Now, this is in a context where we already have a fairly high bar compared to your average church or your average small group, where we do evangelism training, report back, hold people accountable, call people to give their testimonies from time to time. But the group said we need to raise the bar even further and hold each other even more accountable for living out the implications of what we're learning. And one person said it this way, he said, it's uncomfortable, don't always like it, but we need to do it so we're ready. Again, I've never heard a call for a higher bar and higher accountability in any Christian ministry I've been a part of. And so, something like that will keep me going. That adds to my momentum in my life. It'll keep me going for quite a while. But what's also caught my attention in these days in our group is the way our prayer lists have changed. The way we are praying for people and who we pray for and how we pray for them has shifted subtly over time. And here's what I'm seeing. We've always been praying for those in our lives who don't know the Lord. And we start broad. We just start praying for people that we see and people we interact with, people we know who are in our lives that the Lord has placed there for us to be salt and light and a witness to. And as we pray, things start to filter out. We start connecting with people more and more. And so we've always prayed in that sense for people around us, for their eyes to be opened, for them to turn from darkness to light, from Acts 26:18, one of our core practices. But what I've noticed in our prayer requests this last little while is that we're now praying for those same people who are not just theoretical connections, but have now connected with us. We're doing stuff with them. And we're now praying, Lord, what should we do next? How do we share our story more or come to the place where we can share the gospel with them? It's not just a theoretical future connection. We're praying now from a place of connection with these people. And that has changed. And it's changed for everybody in our group in some measure. We're no longer praying just to break the ice with someone and get to know their name and do that first thing with them. We're praying, what next? And how do we share the gospel ultimately with these people? It's been a slow, almost imperceptible shift, but there's been a shift. It's like the blocks of wood have been removed and momentum is gaining and it's becoming unstoppable in our lives. John Maxwell used to speak of the big mo, referring to momentum. How momentum really is one of the biggest factors in any kind of organization or movement or situation. Momentum can be a good thing if you're moving in the right direction. Momentum can be a bad thing if you're not moving. And you got to get moving if you're moving in the wrong direction. But momentum really is the driver of what happens in an organization and really in your life. Momentum is built as you take little steps to move in the right direction. And the more steps you take in the right direction, the more momentum you gain. But momentum can slow as you start to compromise on your core ideas and your core practices that contribute to the trajectory you want to head on. And so momentum can either be fed or it can be interfered with. And the same is true in disciple-making momentum. If a plane in the sky stops moving forward, it drops out of the sky. There is a big merry-go-round, a place called Phantom Lake, where I grew up in northern Manitoba. And it was a merry-go-round that had these spokes going out. And it was huge. Like, to get it going, you had to push super hard just to get the thing moving. But then it would go faster and faster, and you'd move in. The people pushing would move in closer to the core on those spokes. So they were, barely walking as they pushed, but the outside of this thing was just flying. And it would move so fast that kids hanging onto the cable at the edge of this wheel could not hold on. And they would literally go flying off into the beach and into the bush, whatever's beside. Everybody laugh and cheer. Oh, look, there's Johnny. He's got another concussion. And this thing had so much speed and momentum. It was unbelievable. And when we started, though, it was just really, really hard to push, but it would get moving. This is an example of what's called the flywheel effect. That holds true again in individuals and organizations, certainly in disciple-making movements. Here's a technical description of it. The flywheel effect occurs when small wins accumulate over time, creating momentum that keeps your business growing. Now, the flywheel effect was really popularized by Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. And here's an excerpt from, I believe, one of his newer monographs on the subject. The flywheel effect is a concept developed in the book Good to Great. No matter how dramatic the end result, good to great transformations never happen in one fell swoop. In building a great company or a social sector enterprise, or I would say disciple-making movement, there is no single defining action, no grand program, no killer innovation, no solitary lucky break, no miracle moment. Rather, the process resembles relentlessly pushing a huge, heavy flywheel, turn upon turn, building momentum until a point of breakthrough and beyond. That's the way movement happens. So here's a question. What are the small and great actions that build disciple-making momentum? Well, I believe that we've captured some of those in the core practices that we have in 12 Church. The first big push in disciple-making momentum comes individually when you choose, or I choose, to align our lives with the mission of Jesus Christ, regardless of our profession, our location, our financial situation, of all those details and maybe even excuses we would use not to. We just choose that we are going to align our life with joining Jesus Christ on mission. And that can be hard, and it can be feeling like just pushing an impossible to push merry-go-round as a little kid where it's barely moving, but it's the first big step. As you join with others who are on the same mission, who has likewise aligned their lives with Jesus Christ, momentum will build. And then as you begin praying and paying attention, praying for those around you who need the Lord, and asking Him to open their eyes and turn them from darkness to light, momentum will begin to build, often invisibly. You won't always see the momentum being built, but every now and then you'll have an indication that things are happening in the spiritual that are going to spill over into the visible in those people's lives. And then as you're equipped to facilitate Discovery Bible studies, as you're trained and practice sharing your story of how God has worked and is working in your life, as you're equipped to share the gospel in natural conversations with your friends, momentum will continue to build. So the big question, have you started pushing the flywheel? Have you made the decision to join Jesus on mission fully, to align your life around joining Jesus Christ on mission? It's a big step. It's like starting to push a locomotive. And you've got to remove those little blocks, those little hindrances, and just start pushing. But as you push, as you move in the right direction and take the next step and the next step and begin obeying as a habit, as a way of life, momentum will build. And eventually you and those who are joining with you on your mission will become unstoppable. So take your place and add your energy, your time, your resources, the gifts that God has given you to joining Jesus on His mission to seek and to save the lost, to be a disciple who makes disciples.